saw that. Brick killed a guy.
I already know that Sunny fans probably aren't gonna love me for this one. I'm seeing a few comments on my last Sunny video that they returned to form in season 16, and I just can't say that I agree. And I wanted to love this season, I really did. I want to start by saying that Always Sunny in Philadelphia is still one of my favorite comedy series of all time. In my opinion, it met and surpassed the highs of other contenders like The Office or Curb, and operated on that level for far longer than any other series on television. There was a time, probably around season 12, where I thought that Sunny would never lose it. They were still developing characters, surprising audiences, and pushing boundaries far more than I thought was possible so late into a show's development. This was the season where Mac finally came out of the closet and Charlie finally banged the waitress, two conclusions to some of the longer running gags on TV. In Charlie's case, that dynamic was set up in the pilot.
What's going on up here?
Oh, not too much. Charlie's using you to prove that he's not racist, and then he asked me out on a date.
Even season 13 seemed promising, even though a lot of people consider that to be one of the show's weaker seasons. It started with that bait and switch marketing where they pretended that Dennis was gonna leave and the gimmick of Mac getting shredded. Dennis was absent from the writers' room that season though, and a lot of fans noticed the difference in the overall show, outside of these draws. Season 14 and 15 weren't much better in my opinion, and here we are in season 16, where I really thought they'd turn things around. They started their podcast after last season, which offers insight into their creative process as Rob, Glenn, and Charlie go back through the episodes of years past. A lot of fans, including myself, thought that this perspective would translate to the new season, and we did get a hint of that with the return of Charlie's Forgotten Sisters.
Hey guys,
What's up, Glenn?
do you want to stick your dicks in my mouth?
Not yet. No, I mean, maybe later. Why would you say that?
Just a thought.
And maybe it was this expectation that led to how I feel about the new season. But now that I've watched all the episodes, I can't help but be disappointed. As much as I wanted to love it, I don't think I really laughed much throughout the whole thing, and that's kind of sad to me. It felt like watching your favorite athlete at the end of their career. Sure, there's still flashes of what made them great, but they just aren't the same as they used to be, and they probably never will be again.
Manning came into this game leading the NFL in interceptions thrown with 13. He has added 3 today.
I don't think anyone can really argue that Sunny isn't past its prime. Even if you love season 16, you're kidding yourself if you think it's anywhere near peak Sunny. They kind of seem out of ideas, and this isn't the first season where that started to show. Take Frank versus Russia, for example. This episode felt wholly unoriginal to me. The A-plot revolves around Charlie using a restaurant buzzer to cheat for Frank while he plays chess, eventually elevating to a match with a Russian grandmaster. The main inspiration for this was the story of Hans Niemann, who was accused of cheating by world champion Magnus Carlsen after the former beat him. The internet then began to speculate as to how Niemann could have cheated, jokingly suggesting that he may have used vibrating anal beads to make the correct moves.
Hans, yesterday was a terrible day for you, and today you start out with a masterpiece. How would you summarize it?
Chess speaks for itself.
Is it something special doing this against Magnus, Hans?
I'm an internet guy, so I knew about this story, but I acknowledge that it might not have been mainstream enough for the bulk of Sunny's audience to know exactly where the episode was headed as soon as anal beads and chess were introduced. Still, this was basically an episode referencing a niche and now old internet story from last year, but it was presented in the episode as if it was totally new. When Dennis had the revelation about controlling Frank while he played chess, it felt as if the audience wasn't supposed to have seen this coming from a mile away. I'm on the fence as to whether or not everyone involved knew that this was based on a real-life story, or if someone just pitched it in the writer's room like it was a new idea. And the episode was no more original in its B story. Dennis does a backwards Dennis system to get Dee and Mac a date while catfishing Mac like he did in Ass Kickers United. They've done this stuff before.
All of this. I've heard all of this before. No?
Shut up, bird.
The gang seems to have gotten markedly dumber this season too. I don't know if it was a gradual degeneration over the course of the last few years, but it never stuck out to me the way it did in season 16. The very first scene of the season involves Mac and Dennis not understanding what inflation is, or even really what interest is, and getting scammed out of $5. That seems like something that Charlie would fall for. Maybe Mac too, but certainly not Dennis. Say what you want about the guy, but Dennis has never been so dumb as to trade $10 for $5 and think he's getting a deal.
As a matter of fact, I'm starting to think we need to intervene on you for your goddamn illiteracy.
Yeah, Charlie, you are getting real dumb.
A similar thing can be said for Frank's gun use in episode 2. It kind of felt like a caricature of an already absurd situation. The concept of disarming Frank coupled with him shooting everyone in the gang is a pretty good pitch, but he's trying to open a can of sardines with a loaded gun in the first scene. We've seen him irresponsibly use a gun countless times, but never this much and in this way. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he pulled the gun for the rest of the season.
We're doing our best. We're doing our
Where's
best.
the
goddamn fire!
Risky Rats was meant to be the social commentary episode of the season, where the gang goes to a copyright-free Chuck E. Cheese and laments the change in culture over the years. The 50s and 60s represented by Frank, and the 80s represented by the rest of the gang. Unlike some similar and particularly pointed episodes of the past, like Gun Fever 2 and The Gang Solves the Bathroom Problem, I don't really know what the point of this episode was. What I got out of it was that there's always people yearning for the good old days, but progress is usually good. It's not really something that's groundbreaking in my opinion, and the episode was probably the weakest of the season for me. That's not to say that there was nothing funny about the season. Out of the gate, the revelation that Charlie had not only a bathroom but an entire other bedroom in his apartment was a great idea. We've seen closed doors in his place for years, and to finally open them 16 years later to reveal that he was actually living in a relatively spacious one bedroom is a funny twist. But the rest of the episode was just a miss for me. Selling inflatable furniture, Mac's nut allergy, Dee gluing herself to shit, and Charlie's incredibly predictable bad investment, none of it really even made me chuckle. Even the funny stuff was more amusing than laugh out loud hilarious. Like the concept of pitching Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston different ideas, their whole dynamic, and thinking that Aaron Paul was Frankie Muniz was decently funny. But nothing happened in that episode that really made me laugh out loud. Even the turn at the end where Bryan Cranston went into Walter White mode before revealing that he was acting made me smile, but nothing had me cracking up like the older seasons did. Some of the other joke highlights for me were Charlie not realizing that he was already past 40, Mac's gay uncle being the dad he's always wanted but ignoring him, and what I consider to be the funniest line of the season.
She's hiding something, Dennis. You want me to hold her down and rip it off her? Yeah.
Now on to the main reason I'm making this video, which is that I feel like Always Sunny is kinda starting to hurt their legacy a bit at this point. I really hoped that season 16 would be a true return to form, but in my opinion, it wasn't. It may have been a bit better than seasons 14 and 15, but that's a far cry from their peak. And it's begun to feel like the show's reached a point where it's just been on so long that it's nearly impossible for them to recapture the magic they had in earlier seasons. And the more lackluster seasons they produce, the more they water down the entirety of the show.
So you see, I unplugged it.
I think one of the main reasons season 16 and some of the other recent seasons have lost some of that Sunny magic is that the gang is starting to feel their format getting a bit stale. There are only so many storylines you can create around the main characters owning a bar, so they've ventured out into the world more and more in recent seasons. Unfortunately, I think they lost something when they made that move. I'm not suggesting that there's a better way to do it. They've been at it for so long, I'm not really sure they have another choice. But that's kind of the point, right? Sure, Dennis, Dee, Mac, Charlie, and Frank are generally the same characters they were in early seasons, but the show's been forced to expand its scope to the point where it just isn't the same as it used to be. And that feels unavoidable at this point.
Raccoon meat!
I was really hoping that Sunny wouldn't fall off like so many other comedy shows tend to do at the end of their run. I never wanted Sunny to be a show where you cut your rewatch a few seasons short and start over, but it feels like we're there now. And continuing on will only add to the feeling that Sunny isn't what it used to be. As much as I'd be sad to see it go, I think season 16 is a fine place for them to end. It wouldn't be ending on a high, but it wouldn't be ending on a low either. And any more mid to low tier seasons will just hurt the overall legacy of what I consider to be the greatest comedy series ever made. Anyone who watches or listens to the Always Sunny podcast knows how much these guys love the show, the process, and their characters. I don't think any of this is due to lack of effort or talent. It's just the result of producing 16 seasons with the same cast of characters. Eventually, things are going to start to feel stale. And the fact that it hadn't happened for at least 12 or 13 seasons is a testament to how brilliant Rob McElhenney, Glenn Howerton, and Charlie Day are. For now though, if I had to put it in my rankings, I'd probably put it at number 14, above the last 2 seasons. Side note, I have elevated seasons 1 and 2 after my ranking video. The comments were right, I had them too low. I just didn't want to overload the bottom of the list with all the new seasons, but that's probably where they belong. But maybe I'm completely off base of what the general Sunny fandom thinks. Some people clearly like season 16, and I'd love to hear your favorite moments in the comments. Who knows, maybe on a 3rd or 4th watch I'll start to come around on it. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.